we also hit some big plays on some third downs that help us led to the score. So definitely an area we have to improve on. It's not just one person, it's everything. We're making sure that, hey, are we calling the right plays to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands fast enough? Are we getting our best guys in space? Are we doing, while wide receiver group is trying to develop and emerge, are we doing enough with our tight ends and running backs that way as well? So we're looking at every aspect of it.
And like you said, there's a lot to this third down thing, but it was something that was an issue a year ago. South Carolina ranked 113th at just under 34% conversions on third down. And again, they're 122nd right now at right around 27%. I ran the numbers through the first couple games, and the average down and distance for South Carolina on third down right now is 9. They're consistently putting themselves in third and long situations, which goes back to something else. You got to win more consistently on first and second down. Their first down efficiency is not very good. So if you go out there, you get a yard and a half, 2 yards on first down, incomplete throw on second down. Well, guess what? You're in 3rd and 8 now. You know what I mean? Like, this is becoming a problem against, 3 very different type of opponents in Old Dominion, Kentucky, and LSU. 2 games that you won to begin with, but you're still having trouble in this area.
And to coincide with the third down issues, kind of going back to the ball security point, a lot of these sacks that they've taken have come on third down, and
7 of 13.
Yep. Wow. It's not good.
That's right.
They got to be better just on third down in general. And, how do they do it? I mean, look, run game is obviously what they do best. Passing is still kind of a work in progress, though. I thought it was a lot better last week, but it is something they've got to get figured out, and they just have to find the right system of play calling to kind of get that done.
And the problem is you have an offense that is not where it needs to be with passing at this point in time. As I mentioned a moment ago, one of the on the lower end of all of college football when it comes to passing offense, 122nd as well, just like your third down efficiency. And through 3 games, Carolina quarterbacks, this does include Robbie Ashford and what he was doing last week on third down, are only 9 of 18 on third downs when it comes throwing, and a lot of those were throws that were short of the sticks that didn't end up converting third downs anyway. Lenore Sellers specifically, so you're talking about third and long situations, an average down distance of 9. He's only completing 50% of his throws 10 yards or more. So you're not putting your quarterback, and when he's healthy at least, in a position where he can be the most successful. And again, when you have an offense that is 70% run plays, well, that takes away, 3/4 of your playbook on third down, because most of the time you're not running on third down unless you're just backed up against your own goal line and trying to put your punter in a better situation. You're trying to throw on those downs, and that's just not what South Carolina's good at right now.
Yeah, and I feel like that number is a little bit skewed just because, Sellers didn't play the second half of that game at all, really. And I feel like if he did, because at that point I think he was already like 9 of 16 passing. By the end of the game, I think he could have probably gotten to 30 passes, and that probably would have been the highest mark for him by far this season. So I feel like it's just all coming together slowly but surely. It may not seem like it, but for real though, that offense was firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Run, pass, option, whatever they called. They put 24 points up on the board in the first half, and I know a lot of us did not see that coming. So, you hope Sellers gets healthy rather quickly. And look, if he's out this week, okay, whatever. You can survive without him. But I'm really interested to see what Loggins and this offense has up their sleeve when Ole Miss comes to town.
This is definitely an area when it comes to third down specifically that you're going to have to improve on, because 5 of your final 9 opponents are top 40 in third down defense in the country. So this is something that needs to get better fast.
Better hope they don't have a good run defense.
And hey, there's a lot of good run defenses that you're going up against too. So we knew the schedule was going to take a significant step up in the month of October, but I think you're really feeling it right now. And again, you're still got a chance to go 3-1 in September as long as you handle your business this weekend, which is where we hoped this team was going to be. But I think we also expected the offense to be a little more efficient across the board at this point in time. Again, the running is going fine. I think we saw a big step up this past weekend. The run blocking, all that kind of stuff is making its improvements, but you're going to need to be more efficient as you get into these tougher games.
I think this weekend, whoever's out there playing for South Carolina, I feel like it's going to be a really good test to work out a lot of the kinks, I think, offensively, and maybe air it out a little bit. Maybe see what you got, and hey, go from there.
I would be pretty surprised if we see Sellers on Saturday.
I would say so too. It's just, and it's not even like the fact that like we know anything. It's just you look at the situation just logically here. He's coming off the ankle sprain. He may say he's ready to roll and all that, but how healthy is he really? I've said before, if he's not 100%, if he's like even 99.9% healthy, there's still a 0.1% chance he's not fully there. So why run the risk against a team like Akron? If Carolina can't win without him on Saturday, there are bigger problems going on here.
Yeah, even with Ashford's limits when it comes to throwing the football, you should still be efficient enough to be able to beat a team like Akron. You give an opportunity for the North Sellers to rest. You have a bye week coming up, so you're talking about roughly 2.5 weeks where he can really get back to where he needs to, and you don't want to run the risk of him getting hurt. Because if you don't have Lenore Sellers down the stretch, these games that you might have a chance in against the Oklahomas and the Missouris and the A&Ms, and who knows, maybe even Ole Miss and Alabama if things go the right way, that chance diminishes greatly without Lenore Sellers.
And you need to at least see what you got with Robbie, because it's like, we saw him for a half of football last week, but then again, that came in a weird spot. If he gets a full start, at least you get to see what he can do. And if the time comes again where he has to play, it's like, okay, we know what we got in this guy, good or bad, and we can, roll from there. So I'll be interested to see how he does this weekend.
And we talk a lot about Lenore Sellers and his rapport with these receivers and chemistry and all that kind of stuff, which is still building. If he's taking the majority of the reps with the ones, well, that means that Robbie Ashford's not really working with these guys either. So what does, assuming maybe he's getting more reps as the one in practice, if Lenore Sellers is banged up, what does that do to possibly improve the passing this upcoming weekend for him?
Yeah, and again, it's going to really help him, because Dowell was talking about it yesterday. I think it was like the first question he was asked. It was just, Robbie's working with very limited reps, because Lenore's is the starter, and the starter obviously gets more reps. But with Robbie, if he's getting more ones this week, it's going to be good for him to work with these receivers, and hopefully that connection can definitely develop here.
Again, coming up Saturday night, 7:30, South Carolina and Akron. Pregame coverage starting with Gamecocks Game Day, myself and Terry Ford at 2:30 at the party lot out there at Sound and Images. By the way, the weather is supposed to be pretty nice for Saturday. Going to be in the upper 80s and sunny. So this cloudy raininess should be pushed through, and should have a great weekend out at Williams-Brice Stadium. We'll dive into some of the specifics of what South Carolina needs to avoid doing this weekend against a very beatable Akron team. That's coming up next. It is The Extra Point. It's our Ed and Jack Veltri on your Thursday here in the game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri along with you here on The Game on your Thursday. Appreciate everybody that chimes in on the Firehouse Subs text on 803-404-6100. Lamont actually brings up a good point here. He says, how many false starts has Carolina had on third to make it third and long? Going back through every game so far this season, quite a few penalties for South Carolina on third downs that have put them in some of these longer situations. I don't have a specific number of how many times there have been false starts, but we saw that a couple times this past weekend against LSU, if I'm remembering correctly. And that's kind of brings me to my next point as we go into this Akron game, where, again, Carolina is basically a 4-touchdown favorite. Talent-wise, they're a lot better. This is a really bad Akron team. If you just don't go out there and shoot yourself in the foot, you should be fine. But it's an opportunity for you to clean up some of these mistakes. And yes, again, we talked plenty about the penalties not being called the right way on Saturday. But there were a lot of mistakes South Carolina made penalty-wise that were just dumb, self-inflicted wounds.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. I mean, there were just so many times in that game where they just, what the phrase is, shot themselves in the foot. It was, again, not to get too deep into penalties here. It's just a lot of the mistakes they made were, of their own, and that's something that you'd really like to see limited this weekend. It's the offsides, it's the false starts, it's the illegal men downfield. It's just fine-tuning all those things and correcting it to where it's not happening very often. I mean, I think ideally you'd like to see it not at all, but maybe 1 to 2 is fine. And then obviously the missed tackles needs to be something that, they're correcting just in general, honestly, because that was something that really got out of hand. But yeah, penalties, I mean, the ones that they can control, got to limit them.
Let's talk about those missed tackles. Cut number 16 here, Dave. This is Clayton White yesterday addressing what was a very apparent issue this past weekend against LSU.
First play, a lot of times our guys, sometimes you can overstride instead of not breaking down, but more creeping into the tackle, shimmying into the tackle, we call it. So we had a couple of those. We had overran a couple of things, and then sometimes we just didn't wrap and squeeze. So this week, obviously, we've been, got back to some of the fundamentals of tackling and bringing running backs and receivers and tight ends down and quarterbacks down to the ground. But obviously, yeah, we definitely missed more tackles that game than we did the first two.
And tackling is one of those things that in like principle sounds so easy, right? It's like, we'll just go there, wrap your arms around them, drive your weight into them and bring them down to the ground. But when you're going up against, especially a team like LSU that is a lot more athletic and more talented across the board than Kentucky or Old Dominion were in the first couple of weeks, which Kentucky certainly has their share of good athletes, but LSU significantly better in that regard. You saw that was a glaring problem. Like, okay, South Carolina is not putting themselves in good position to bring these ball carriers down.
Absolutely not. I mean, I think it was more fundamental than anything. And asking some of the guys about that this week, I mean, they said it was more of a just not wrapping up issue compared to fatigue. Because obviously, being on the field for as many plays as they were in the third quarter, you had to imagine like they were getting kind of worn down a bit. But again, they kind of didn't blame it on that. They just blamed it on, they need to wrap up better. And look, my thing is, if you're going to miss a tackle, have someone right behind them to clean it up. I think that is the key. 11 men to the ball, essentially, right? That type of mentality, and I think that could really work well. But I know this has been brought up a few times. I mean, how do you feel about the fact that, because I know they had the 4-man front to begin with.
Yep.
Then they switched to the 3, and the reason Clayton was doing that was because he wanted to have more guys in coverage, and it makes sense because LSU is a really good passing offense. But at the same time, I mean, you take one extra guy off the line, LSU was running the football very well, and you saw that on Saturday.
Yeah, and Carolina already this season we know has not been the best when it comes to stopping the run. That was one thing that actually Kentucky was doing pretty decently in that game a couple weeks ago. It's just the pass rush was so good, it didn't allow them to do anything through the air. And we obviously saw Old Dominion was able to get off some good runs in that game number 1 as well. So yeah, having as many guys up front to be able to stop the run seems the most advantageous. And I don't know if that's something that you're going to continue to adjust going down the stretch based on teams that you play. But when I think about Ole Miss, when I think about Alabama, you're going to face teams that are good at running and passing the football. So I feel like, yes, it's okay I understand the reasoning by wanting to put somebody back in coverage, but man, you can't continue to get killed up the middle with these inside runs like you have so far.
Oh, no, you definitely can't. There were just times where LSU was really able to do whatever they want running the football. And I mean, hey, it is a big part of why they won that game. Just from a running standpoint. But Carolina, they got to be able to clog up holes. And look, if they're going to run a three-man front, they really have to figure out the best way to stop the run. And I don't know if that's, crashing in with linebackers more. I don't know if it's squeezing more. There has to be a way to kind of figure it out, because that can't continue. We've seen it for a few weeks now where the run game's been pretty strong for the other teams.
Something else South Carolina really has to clean up from an offensive standpoint now is ball security. South Carolina has put the ball on the ground fumble-wise 9 times, which is tied for worst in the nation with teams like Auburn. Now, fortunately, they've only lost 3 of those fumbles, but the more you put the ball on the ground, the more likely you are to end up losing it. And this, for as, much as this offense is still coming along, you cannot afford to just give the ball away at the potential clip that South Carolina is putting themselves in danger of doing.
No, it's been awful. It's just straight up. I mean, there's no way to tiptoe around it. It's been awful. And the thing is, it's a lot of the quarterback that is, the issue with the fumbles. I mean, Josh Simon has had one this year, but luckily that was recovered by Michael Smith. The point is, they have to hold on to the ball tighter. And in quarterback situations like the third down instances I talked about, when Ashford and Sellers both fumbled, Dowell talked about it the other day. You need to throw the ball away if that's the case. Like, if you're under heavy pressure, whatever the case might be, just throw it away, or just hold on for dear life and fall to the ground. It's just getting kind of out of hand, and it's something that really does need to take a big stride forward.
And that's something to me. And yes, the offensive line does need to continue to improve on their pass blocking, but. And this is something that people were bringing up when he was still wearing the goggles. Like, does Lenore Sellers have that peripheral vision to see the rush coming? Which I'm not saying that was a problem. And that's something that people bring up, because he does hang on to the ball for a very long time. And when somebody's bearing down on him, there was a lot of times where it looked like he just did not see the guy coming. And, he's in the process of cocking back, and that's leading to fumbles.
Maybe it is peripheral vision. I don't know. I just think, I don't know. I mean, awareness. I just don't know what you really chalk it up to. I don't know. He's got the contacts in now, so he played a lot better in that first half. And I think he only had the one fumble, so it's not like it's all that bad. But again, it is a glaring issue.
Yeah. So, and that's something that can come with time, as you just kind of develop more of that sense when it comes to, okay, hey, I've been holding the ball for a long time. There's probably somebody bearing down on me, because you can only pass block for so long at a point. So that's something that hopefully can improve with time, that we'll see if Sellers plays this weekend, which again, I don't think he should.
Neither do I.
If he's not completely 100%, but something we hope to see improve as time goes along. Want to jump into a conversation we started talking about a little bit yesterday, myself and Dimitri Ravenos, about this Tennessee ticket situation with their talent fee that is going to contribute to NIL starting in 2025. This is something that I think is going to be copied across the board, and I think it's worth a little bit of a deeper dive into what this means, not only for Tennessee, but college football as a whole. We'll hit that coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you on your Thursday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. Appreciate our friends over at Georgia Pacific, as always, for our Talking Hardwood segment. Today, we're talking about ticket prices, though. News coming out the other day that University of Tennessee is adding a talent fee to their season tickets for 2025, in addition to an already 4.5% price hike from where it was this year. So in total, a 14.5% increase in prices on tickets, but 10% of that expected to go to the athletes as far as the talent fee goes. I want to hit this cut really quick here. Number 25, this is Pete Thamel on ESPN yesterday, expounding a little bit more on what this means, not only for Tennessee, but for college football and college sports as a whole.
Well, my phone blew up a little bit today, Kevin, and I would just think about it this way. Instead of you paying your real estate tax this April, what if you pay to sit on your couch and watch the Eagles tax, right? Or maybe Elle pays to sit on her couch and watch the Georgia Bulldogs tax. This is some very clever marketing by Danny White, the athletic director at Tennessee. Remember when he was at UCF and he claimed a national title? He knows how to draw attention. And this is very simply a ticket hike, under the guise of a new era in college sports. Obviously, with the revenue share expected to come next fall, everybody needs more money, 25 to 30 million. This will get Tennessee probably 8 to 10 million when they do it. And look, it's easy to do this, Kevin, when you are sold out completely. Your team's in the top 10 and rolling, and you could just call it a Nico Ameleava tax.
Yeah.
Instead.
And he brings up a really good point there at the end. Like, Tennessee is in the perfect position to do this. For one, you have a very passionate fan base that routinely, whether they're good or bad, is going to sell out the 103,000 seats at Neyland Stadium. You happen to be one of the best teams in college football right now. You have one of the more promising young quarterbacks in the game, and you're a team that's looking to potentially be in the college football playoff, this year, and in years to come. So while nobody likes to pay more for things, I feel like the Tennessee fan base, it can probably, for the most part, understandably say, okay, yeah, if we want to continue to play like this, we need to help out any way that we can.
So there are a lot of ways. When I first heard about it, I was like, that's interesting, because I've never seen anyone do that before. I think Pete Thamel's right. It's clever. Now, what I'm wondering is, is this going to be split amongst the players? Like, is it going to go to, Nico and, the third string long snapper? Is it going to be split up evenly, or is it going to be like all the top guys get the money,
Well, the way I understand this, because in 2025, we're expected to have the new financial model in college sports. And look, there's still things going on in the courts that are trying to finalize all that, but it's expected that that's when schools can officially start paying the athletes as a part of like that $22 million cap that's been thrown out there. We're just waiting on the final specifics of all that. But these schools are basically positioning themselves for that to be the case. I mean, Texas A&M fired a bunch of people within their athletic association. A lot of other schools are making moves to be in position, because you don't want to be caught, lacking when they say, all right, it's good. We're green lighting this. This is what's going to be happening next year. You can pay up to this amount. And this is Tennessee's way of basically guaranteeing about half that money by coming through tickets. And again, Tennessee's in a place where they're okay with doing this. And I imagine, because they got a wait list for tickets and all that kind of stuff, they'll be able to get as much out of this as they're desiring. My question is, how many other schools around the country can do this to where the fan base, without much hesitation, be like, yeah, that's fine with us? Like Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, like programs like this. But as you go down a little bit further, I feel like you would run into a little bit more of a resistance from fans.
Perennial top 25 blue blood type teams can definitely do this. But let's say South Carolina, for instance. I don't know how that would go over. It's like, okay, Garnet Trust and the NIL collectives. I mean, look, that's the way of getting these athletes the money. But maybe I don't know what the numbers are, but maybe Garnet Trust isn't bringing in as much money, getting donations and stuff. This would be the way, but how would that go over? I think a lot of people would feel iffy on it, and I just don't know if they could pull it off. That's my only thing with it.
I feel like, let's talk specifically for South Carolina here, who, again, is a program that is not one of the elite in college football. That's not one of, the top 3 or 4 in the SEC right now. I guess if you're trying to sell this to your fan base here, you're in a way kind of saying, hey, we're not where we want to be, but if we want to get to that point, this is a way to get there. And I do feel like with a passionate fan base like have here at South Carolina, I feel like a lot of people would be on, I'm not saying everybody would, but a lot of people would be on board saying, okay, we know if we want to compete, we have to do this or else we're going to get left behind.
And either way, even at like Tennessee and these bigger schools, there are always going to be people that are just not on board with paying extra money. I understand that aspect of it. But for Carolina, I think you bring up a good point. It's like, hey, like this is the next step to get to where we want to go. I think it would take like if Carolina goes like 8-4 this year, it's a lot easier to sell it. But if you're going like if they said it, they're going to do it next year, and they went like 5-7 this year, that's kind of a tough sell because you're not bringing in a solid program.
And I think we're only 3 years in to the NIL era, and where it's been up to this point, which has caused so much of the chaos, is it's literally a go out into your fan base and say, hey, we need X amount of dollars to make sure we have this caliber of talent. And initially, yes, people are fine with paying that, but over time, especially if you're not getting the results that you want, I feel like there's a fatigue that sets in. People like, hey, I've been cutting this check for X amount of dollars for however many months or however many years, and I'm not getting what I want out of it.
And people are going to pull their funding.
And
that's the thing.
People may be more likely to pull their funding. When you give them a little more something tangible by wrapping this into tickets, so, okay, I'm paying for the experience of being in the stadium every single weekend and helping out with talent. I feel like that's a way that doesn't disguise it necessarily, but I think people would be more on board with it because they're getting more of something in return with that actual tangible ticket of going to the stadium.
Absolutely. And I feel like to get this done for schools, not smaller schools per se, but schools that don't have that winning pedigree, you got to throw in, I think, a little something besides the going to the game and having that experience to get the fans going. I don't know, like maybe more promotions or something. Just a little more incentive for why should I do this besides the fact of, because it's all up to chance at this point of, hey, like bring in this money and we're going to go out and get these players, but that's never a guarantee.
Now that is where I'm curious how that changes the relationship between the fans and the players. And yes, there are a lot of people that do contribute to NIL, but you in a sense don't always know necessarily where your money's going. Hey, my $20, did I go to basketball? Did I go to football? And
that's the thing.
There are some places where you can say, hey, I want to make sure it goes to this or that. But if I'm paying for my season tickets and there's a 10% talent fee on that, and I know that that money is going to the guys on the field that I'm watching, if I'm not pleased with the product, you know, does that make the fan's voice more important at that point in time? I'm not saying what fans are saying is going to suddenly start influencing depth chart moves or things like that. But if you're literally paying 80,000 people in Neyland Stadium are paying for what is on the field, the talent on the field, and it's not performing up to their standards, they got to have a voice somewhere, right?
Oh, totally. And it's just, I just don't know. I mean, is this something we see across like all the major college sports? Like, do we see this at, because again, you bring up the point that not everyone knows where their money is going. Like if I donate $5 or whatever the case might be, I don't know if that's going to football or basketball or baseball, soccer. I mean, could go to golf. Does it get to a point where it's like, you know, here's a talent fee for every sport, like the major ones at least? I mean, does that? I don't know.
I don't know. I think this is something a lot of schools are going to try themselves. How many can be as successful as Tennessee and some of these other programs? I don't know. But I imagine there's a lot of ADs and athletic associations that look at what Danny White and Tennessee did and said, why didn't we think of that? Or why didn't we do that first?
I will say, though, if what Pete says is correct, where Tennessee's bringing in, you know, almost $10 million a year doing this, think about Carolina doing it. I mean, I know Neyland Stadium is a bit bigger than Carolina, but we saw what happened over the weekend with how Carolina packed it out. If you can get that on a week-to-week basis, you can bring in a lot of money. Sure. But the one thing I do wonder, though, and I was thinking about this the other day, let's say you buy a ticket from like SeatGeek or something or Ticketmaster. How does does the talent fee get applied to that? I mean, there's already enough fees out there, but how does it buy it straight through the school?
For Tennessee, this is only applying to season tickets as of right now. So if you bought a single game ticket on the secondary market,
you're probably fine.
I don't think that talent fee goes in there necessarily. Now, that's something that could come down the line.
Oh,
but for right
gosh.
now, I think it's just, hey, in May of 2025, if you're buying your season tickets, you're getting a 10% talent fee.
And I think if however many FBS teams there are out there agree to do this, I think that would be the only way to where it's like, okay, you're partnering up with SeatGeek and you add the talent fee in there. Otherwise, I don't know. I mean, hey, it'll be good. It'll be a good thing to see.
Reg weighs in on the Firehouse Subs text line. This is something Dimitri and I kind of talked about this a little bit, that it's tone deaf. He says it's tone deaf for today's clients. And that is something that is interesting to me, because there does seem to be kind of a shift in, the crowd and who you're catering to when it comes to needing to pay your athletes. Because a lot of pro sports, NFL specifically, brought up the example yesterday that, the Atlanta Falcons, when they moved to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, suddenly there were seat licenses and the tickets went up and you had to pay for parking and included in all these packages, where the average person that I knew used to go to games in Georgia Dome wasn't going to games anymore, because it's too expensive, can't afford it. I can't just buy tickets to one game and, go hang out on a Sunday. It's a lot more of an intrusive, a more thorough, expensive process. I don't want to see college sports get to that point where the average person, you're just a diehard Carolina fan, is suddenly outpriced from going to the stadium.
Oh yeah, and just imagine if a family of four is like, "Hey, let's go take a trip to Willie B to go see a game," and it's like, "Oh, there's a talent fee. Why are we paying extra money?" It's like, that's the thing. The average Joe might not know about this stuff, and you gotta, again, I think you got to incentivize the consumer, because it's not going to go over well with everyone.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of pro sports, by the way, NFL back tonight for week number 3, an AFC East matchup between the Patriots and the Jets. Preview that a little bit and talk about what we've learned through the first 2 weeks of the NFL season. That's coming up next. Extra Point Tyler Head, Jack Veltri, along with you on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. Busy day, by the way, here on the Game. Today from 3 until 6, Jay and Elijah going to be out at CHW Cabinetry, 1819 Two Notch Road out in Lexington. Jen Jensen also going to be stopping by for the post-game show. And then the game will also be out at Hardee's at 120 Veterans Road in Columbia for the Hardee's Roundup to raise money for Harvest Hope Food Bank for students. You can go meet Terry Ford from 3 until 6 today, which leads in to Carolina Calls at 6 o'clock as we get Coach Beamer's final thoughts ahead of Saturday's game against Tennessee. Akron. We're talking about Tennessee in the last segment there. And, of course, we also have Thursday Night Football tonight, 7:30 on the Game. And this weekend, tonight's game is another AFC East matchup, just like last week's was. This time it is Jets and Patriots. As a Bills fan, which way do you go with this? Do you hope both teams lose? You hope they just tie, or do you have one preference over the other?
Well, here's a funny story that I don't usually like to talk about. So once upon a time, I was a big New York Jets fan. However,
really? Okay.
Yes, however,
I'm intrigued.
However, let's go back to, I think it was 2020, and I'm watching the Jets. I think they were playing like the Broncos or something. This is during the pandemic. This is when Adam Googly Eye Gase was the head coach and stuff. I just remember they got smacked. Like, I'll look it up real quick. It was like a 40-point blowout. I'm like, you know what? That's it. I'm done watching this. I'd been sick of how bad the Jets have been for years
the Jets
on
were
end.
So bad you denounced your fanship.
I literally did. It got to a point where I was literally like listing like some of my Jets gear to sell, and people actually bought it. I recouped some money off of it. And I was like, you know what? I need to just start fresh. I'm picking a new team. Just it's so toxic being a Jets fan.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I landed on the Bills. I was like, you know what? They're an up-and-coming team.
Oh, New York as well.
New York is actually New York. And it was cool. So, yeah, say what you will. I don't care. I'm much more happy now. I think that's what matters. But if I have a rooting interest in this game, I mean, look, my brother's still a Jets fan.
Yep.
And I'm wishing him happiness. But at the same time, I'm wishing for Mike Yuba's happiness. So
that's true.
How do I pick?
The Jets have successfully made it through 2 games with a healthy Aaron Rodgers. 1-1 so far. Obviously got just trounced by the 49ers in week number 1, which I don't think was too surprising to anyone. A big question tonight, can Aaron Rodgers eclipse over 200 yards? Under 200 in his first 2 starts. Now, this is a Pat's defense, not the best. Geno Smith threw for over 300 yards last week in their loss in overtime to the Seahawks. Do we see Aaron Rodgers, who, and look, every quarterback in the NFL has looked shaky for the most part for the first couple weeks because most of them didn't play in the preseason. Is tonight the night where we see Aaron Rodgers kind of return to form?
He should be able to, but at the same time, and I think there's a multitude of reasons why for him not throwing for a ton of yardage right now. Number one, he's obviously a lot older, and I don't put it past him because he's a great player, and he always will be as long as he's out there. So he's like Tom Brady for me. He's always going to just be good. At the same time, the Jets have a great running attack with Breece Hall and guys like that. So obviously, it's kind of like Carolina. They're going to divvy off a lot of their plays to the run game, and I think that's probably why you see Rodgers not throw for 300 yards a game. So, and he doesn't have to. That's the thing. The Jets are a good team. They can win without him having to throw for that many yards, and I think he's just going to do enough each week to get the job done, and maybe he'll have some games where he throws for over 200 yards, but I could definitely see it tonight.
Speaking of rushing attacks, Ramondre Stevenson, one of the top rushers in the NFL so far, they just handed the ball off to him a lot. He's accounting for basically a third of the plays that the Patriots have run so far this year, and again is one of the best runners in the NFL as right now. Going up against the Jets defense that we saw 2 weeks ago give up about $150 to Jordan Mason in that week number 1 game. So can Ramondre Stevenson run all over this Jets defense be the key to the Patriots winning tonight?
Well, the Jets are now down Jermaine Johnson, and at least to my knowledge, Hassan Reddick is not signed yet. So
no, he's not.
The Jets have a pretty stellar defense, I would say. Obviously, week 1, they kind of got exposed a little bit. They came back down to earth and played a little bit better against the Titans last week. I don't know, though. And Ramondre Stevenson has caused issues for teams over the years. I believe the Bills have been on the wrong end of some of those sometimes. But I don't know. I think they're going to be feeding the ball often because here's a good stat. The top 2 receivers on the Patriots right now are?
I have no clue.
Both tight ends. Hunter Henry and then Austin Hooper. So
wow, that's where Hooper ended up.
KJ Osborne is the next leading receiver.
Look, Jacoby Brissett is your quarterback. You're not going to have a high flying, super dynamic area like that.
So you're gonna run the ball a lot more, and I'll be interested to see. I don't expect the Pats to win tonight. To be honest, I'll pick the Jets, but I don't know, man. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, if they're going to win tonight, that's where it has to start for them.
Yeah, so that kicks off week number 3 of the NFL season as we're still kind of in that process of learning what every team's about. I think I've been pleasantly surprised that the Saints are the most dynamic offense in the NFL right now.
They've been nasty.
It's one thing to do it against the Panthers. It's another thing to do it against the Cowboys
in
this past
Jerry
weekend.
World.
In Jerry World. Like, oh, maybe the Saints are actually going to be pretty good this year.
I don't know, man. The NFC South is kind of just a mixed bag. I think the Falcons, they look good on Monday night. I'll give them credit.
I was pleasantly surprised what they did on Monday night.
Don't know why the Eagles threw it on third down, but that's besides the point.
True.
And then the Bucks are actually, I think they're slept on again. And then the Panthers are the Panthers. So
Panthers aren't going to be very competitive.
I think I don't know. Hey, there's something about Derek Carr playing well during election season.
I know.
Apparently,
I saw that thing the other day too. So every 4 years, count on Derek Carr to be a lead, and it's certainly fallen into place once again this year. Appreciate it as always, Jack. Coming up next, it is the Game Clock Club Hour presented by Krantz Heating and Cooling with Henry Kazmar, one of the new transfers from Gamecock Baseball, sitting down with Wes Mitchell. This has been the Extra Point on your Thursday here on the Game.
All right, guys, welcome back in. Gamecock Club Hour. Henry Kazmar, South Carolina baseball shortstop. Getting to know him a little bit here. And, man, I'm curious. So I was looking at your bio, and you've always been a pretty high contact hitter, it seems like. Good average. You played from the moment you got to Ohio State, it seems like. Have there been any parts of your game as you've gotten older, as you've gotten to South Carolina even, that you have specifically been focused on, as in, like, here's a part of my game that I want to improve or focus on the most this offseason?
Yeah, I'd say at Ohio State, I kind of focused a lot more on, getting a lot of reps defensively. And that's kind of where I cleaned up my defensive game. And then coming here to South Carolina, Monty's really done a phenomenal job in, analyzing our swings down to, the tiniest little details. And I've kind of seen a lot more power come just from my time here. And that's something that was one of my goals, coming here, is to get a little bit more power. And I knew that was going to come a little bit later in my career because, I have been a good contact hitter. And that's kind of what I'm known for. But coming here, I can already see the power numbers, going up. And I feel like that's something that Coach Monty has been phenomenal at, and I feel like he's going to continue to be phenomenal with me and our entire offense.
Now, do you feel like some of that is just getting older and stronger and kind of continue to build muscle, or is it more approach, little tweaks to your swing? And I mean, I'm sure to an extent it's maybe all the above, but have you gotten a feel for maybe what the biggest difference has been for you at the plate so far?
Yeah, I would say it's a lot of the approach. I mean, in the weight room, obviously that comes into play a lot, with hitting, but I'd say the biggest thing is definitely your approach and, what you're trying to hit when you walk up to the plate. And just having that mindset of, just going up and attacking your pitch. And it's just knowing that it's going to be there and it's going to be a good pitch to hit until it's not, and then you're ready to fire.
I'm looking at your bio. I'm assuming this is correct. Obviously, you throw righty, being a shortstop. But so, have you hit lefty your whole life, or how has that?
Yes.
How did that come about, man? Just you? That's how you picked up a bat, or somebody was like, "Hey, if you could bat lefty, that'd be an advantage," or how did that come about?
Yeah, so my dad actually, ever since I was, probably 3 years old, and I could hold a wiffle ball bat, he always forced me to be a left-handed hitter, and I thank him every day for that. I mean, I love being a lefty. Even though when I was young, I'd meander over to the right side and want to be a right-handed hitter because that was more comfortable, but he told me no, and I give all of my credit to him for, teaching me how to hit left-handed. So that's kind of where that rooted from.
Now, I grew up with some guys that did the same thing, but they still had the righty swing in their bag. It was kind of crazy just because it was naturally how they swung. If you went out there randomly and took BP from the right side, would you still have it, or it's been so long no?
I probably wouldn't have it. I mean, it'd probably be pretty ugly, honestly. So I'm sticking to the left side for sure.
Do you do you play golf righty? Like is everything else righty and you just hit lefty, or how's that work?
So I write right-handed, but I golf left-handed. And then everything else is pretty much right-handed dominant, but it's just my golf and baseball swing is both left-handed. So
I got you. Awesome. And so again, like I said, man, we like to let the fans get to know the athletes a little bit more. We just talked about golf. Are there any other maybe just hidden talents or hidden hobbies, just things maybe that fans would not know about you that they would find interesting?
Yeah, so I would say that a couple of my biggest hobbies are playing the piano. I know how to play the piano pretty well, and I don't actually read music. I play by ear. So that was another thing that my dad taught me. And then another one of my hobbies is card magic. And that's something that my grandfather, my mom's dad, taught me growing up. He would always do a bunch of magic tricks on me. He'd teach me, his card tricks. And I learned a few on my own, and now I'm kind of blowing his mind. So it's kind of a hobby that I've always done, and I take pride in. So.
Oh, that's probably two of the best ones we've had, man. When we've asked that question, honestly. So you've mentioned your family a couple times here. What have they meant to just all of your successes? Obviously, it sounds like you have a great support group at home, and they say it takes a village. What can you maybe say just about your family support and what that has meant to you?
Yeah, it's meant everything to me. At Ohio State, my parents never missed a game. And we were 2 hours north of Ohio State. So even the away games, they came to every single one. And the support they've given me along my career, I mean, I would never be where I am today at South Carolina without their support and their help. And I can't thank them enough for everything they've done for me. And hopefully they can still make it to a lot of the games, even though they're a little bit farther away. But I know they're going to try. So
for sure, man. I think final one I got for you here. In a few months, you and your teammates, you all be suiting up, and then I guess maybe a few weeks after that, you'll be playing SEC ball in front of these huge environments of people. What is it going to mean to you? What's your excitement level going to be like to just run out there, in the garnet and black in these just high leverage SEC games? It's obviously the best conference in baseball. So what will that part mean to you, man?
Oh, it's going to mean everything. I mean, it's why I started playing the game in the first place, is to play in front of, such a great fan base and compete in such high leverage games, like you said. And to compete for the state of South Carolina is something that I look forward to every day. I mean, I go out there on the field every day and just take it all in without even any fans in the stadium. And it just blows me away, and I can't look forward to it enough. Just going out there and with the uniform on with my team and competing for something great. So
Henry, great stuff, man. Once again, we want to thank you for taking the opportunity here. We want to thank the Gamecock Club for sponsoring this interview as well. And hopefully we can talk to you again soon, man. But when we see you out there on the field, we certainly wish you luck. And I know it's going to be an awesome moment for you to run out there in front of the fans. So hopefully we'll talk to you soon. Okay, man?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's Henry Kazmar. This has been the Gamecock Club Hour here. When we come back after this break, it'll be myself, Wes Mitchell, along with host Tyler Head. We'll continue to talk South Carolina versus Akron football and more here on The Game.
Welcome back in. It is the Game Clock Club Hour presented by Krantz Heating and Cooling. Tyrod and Wes Mitchell along with you on your Thursday. Thank you to Henry Kazmar for giving a little bit of his time to talk to us, get to know him a little bit as he's one of the several transfers the Gamecock baseball has coming in this spring. Good interview there. By the way, that's the second straight Gamecock Club athlete that's talked about their love for Cava. We had Ari last week with softball that talked about that her being her favorite place to go, and now Henry has apparently discovered that since moving here to South Carolina.
Apparently we need some NIL deals there.
Hey, if that Marshall coach can do the biscuit thing with Tudor's Biscuits up there in Huntington, West Virginia, why not?
Has anyone taken him up on that? I'm guessing
I don't
not
know.
yet.
So I don't know if that's is that tampering when you're just literally putting out there, hey, players from this specific school, if you come to my school, I will give you this thing. That's got to be against a rule, right?
Depending on how literally people want to interpret him, yes.
I'm sure somebody's trying to level sanctions against Marshall as we speak.
Poor Marshall. Not only are they going to have to lose the game, but then they're going to get hit by the NCAA infractions committee.
Yeah, they're going to strip wins and put them on a bowl ban for 5 years for that one comment.
Meanwhile,
I wouldn't put it past the NCAA.
Meanwhile, Ohio State has a roster value of Lord knows how much this year.
Yeah, I don't think many guys are going to want to leave Ohio State just for biscuits. Funny enough, that's where Henry is coming from, Ohio State. And, of course, that is one of the top programs in college football right now. And, I thought he had some good things to say about, his experience in Williams-Brice Stadium this past weekend, checking out the LSU game. They'll be out there this weekend, as will many other athletes. Talked to Nick Pringle the other day doing the same thing about signing autographs and stuff like that. So, for a guy from Ohio State to say that he thinks South Carolina fans are hungrier and it was a cool environment, that's pretty neat to hear.
He said what he needed to say.
He did.
For one.
He did. He's not pandering, but he's saying the right things.
He ain't no dummy.
He's
he
not.
said what he needed to say. But I thought instead of just saying, "Oh, they're better,"
yeah,
they're hungrier, made me think it was more of a genuine feeling and compliment because. Yeah. Ohio State, they've won titles. That's a place, yeah, obviously they really care about their football. And, man, I would love to go to an Ohio State-Michigan game. I'm sure that's fantastic. That's a bucket list type stuff. I mean, he will have obviously played baseball in the Big Ten and in the SEC coming up in a few months and will have been able to go to games in the Big Ten and now the SEC as well. So pretty – you want to talk about a college experience. That's pretty special. And obviously, you can tell, listen to him, great head on his shoulders, seems to have a great family that have taken great care of him in terms of just putting him in a position to succeed. And I was very impressed. Also, I shared a little bit of that in my questioning with him, the story about Maneri and how Maneri sort of single-handedly found him and was like, I really, really like this guy. So I think you look at those, and we talked about it with Henry, you look at those title teams, those teams have been really good. That's an old school approach is you better be good up the middle defensively. And those really good South Carolina teams, all of them were. And I also know for a fact that Maneri subscribes to the theory of recruit as many shortstops as possible.
Yep. Because
your shortstops typically, and this is not anything new, this is not something that's like reinventing the wheel. Most teams probably feel this way too. Your shortstops, a lot of times, that's the guy with the most pressure on them. That's usually, unless you're just a loaded high school team, which you do have those, most teams, that's your best athlete. And, that's somebody who really is most of the time someone who can sort of command an infield and has those leadership qualities or is used to having to display leadership qualities. So that makes a lot of sense. He certainly will have to compete for that job here at South Carolina, but you really feel like, in my opinion, he's got a pretty good chance to play a lot this year.
I think Jack told me earlier, fall ball starting with about 2 weeks here. I know they usually play some exhibition games in the month of October, but, man, it's right around the corner.
They're playing in College Charleston this year in a scrimmage exhibition. I don't know what you call it in baseball, but a game that will not count, which is pretty cool. I think they're playing down there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
I know. So much going on.
Holbrook.
That's right.
kind of cool.
Very cool. And again, appreciate Henry for taking a little bit of his time for today's Gamecock Club interview presented by Krantz Heating and Cooling. We're at Thursday now, and we're getting close to the game this weekend. Moving on to Akron. Again, we've said all we can say about the LSU game and the penalties and all that kind of stuff. So move on to Akron. And you know, like Coach Beamer did earlier on in the week, we're trying to find the angles of this team. Like, okay, got to look out for this, got to look out for that. There's not two ways about it. This is a really bad Akron team on most accounts that as long as South Carolina goes out there and doesn't shoot themselves in the foot, they should be okay. So this is an opportunity this weekend. And again, we don't know if Sellers is going to play or not. If we talked about the other day that if he's less than 100%, you probably want to sit him and let him get healthy for the Ole Miss game coming up here in a couple weeks. But this is an opportunity to hopefully, like you try to do against Old Dominion, but the game was tight, just get a lot of guys on the field, get a lot of experience, get a lot of rep for guys, and continue to move in the right direction, particularly on offense when it comes to the chemistry of the guys out there as you get into these tougher games here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and this is an opportunity, I think, to get your guys on the field that don't always play. And I think that's incredibly big for the guys who work just as hard as everybody else. Maybe your second team, third team, maybe your scout team, maybe you're just out there, you're busting it, but you're not getting playing time on most Saturdays. And so it's a chance to go create a memory. If you're one of those guys, is a chance to maybe get some of your other players off their feet going into the bye week as well. The schedule does set up fairly well. Like you do have this nightmare run of 3 teams there with Ole Miss and Alabama and Oklahoma. But, I mean, it's in terms of playing 4 games, taking a bye, then getting into that stretch, it does set up pretty well. You don't have, obviously, another SEC team coming in this week to where you're like, all right, if there is a little bit of a hangover, I personally don't think there's going to be. But if there is, you at least feel like you can go win the game, even if that is the case against Akron. And they are projected to not be one of the better teams in the MAC this year. We'll see if that holds up. Obviously, projections are projections. Joe Moorhead has started to sort of, you would think, be at that point where his schemes and his approach and his techniques, all those different things are starting to take hold. But still, it has been a little bit of a struggle. And, you know, we'll dive more into the game, I'm sure, during the next hour and, you know, tomorrow as well. But, by the way, do we know of anyone who covers Akron?
I've been trying to find
someone.
someone.
Far and wide.
I've searched far and wide. There's not a whole lot of coverage out there about the Zips.
It's such a tough job, man.
It is. I did find one website that just kind of covers the MAC in general, but I was not able to get through to anybody there. It's, you know, and again, especially with your program that has struggled as much as Akron's had. They hadn't had a winning season and God knows how long. You know, not as many people talking about them as some of these other teams.
I had forgotten. It wasn't even that long ago. I had forgotten that South Carolina played Akron a few years ago.
2018 maybe.
Yeah, and it was a game that was not on the original schedule, and I think the first game, the game South Carolina was originally going to play was canceled due to weather. Mm-hmm. So Akron had the same situation, so they tacked it on at the end of the year, and it was, ironically, it rained that day too. South Carolina won like 28-3. It was like probably the most forgettable. Just Carolina had an early lead, just sort of ran the ball for a quarter and a half, and then went home. Maybe one of the most forgettable games I've ever been to at Williams-Brice Stadium. But this week you have a sold-out stadium, Parents Weekend, night game, first night game of the year for South Carolina. It obviously is not going to be like last week in terms of atmosphere, but you do have some incentives there for the fans to show out a little bit. I think they're going to do a special light show this week as well.
Again, as you've heard this week, a lot of athletes going to be out there signing autographs and stuff. So plenty of reason to get out there. And again, like I said, first night game, so always cool environment. Weather's supposed to be really nice on Saturday too.
Yep. By the way, before we turn our page completely to this game when we get Chris in here, we always kind of use this final segment to talk about other things in sports too. What do you think about the Mel Kiper too high safety?
I think it's ridiculous. If defenses are finding a way to limit quarterbacks, why punish them for that?
Well, we've given the offenses every advantage that exists.
Yeah.
So now we're going to be like, oh, you can't play too high safeties, which is one of the, maybe the trend of teams going too high is one thing, but too high safety like that's been a thing since the game was invented, basically. So I don't understand.
I don't either. It's like, are you going to throw a flag if they line up that way? Like there are no, outside of being across the line of scrimmage, there are no rules that prevent you from lining up a certain way on defense. So again, if defensive coordinators have figured out a way to say, okay, we're going to keep these quarterbacks from killing us deep by putting two high safeties on the field, why are you punishing them for that? These games are still going to end up being 31-28. It's not like every game's 6-3 now or something like that.
So what happens when you're end of half situation? You have a big lead. Now you can't. Yeah, you can't drop your safeties back.
Yeah, I don't either.
Do you know how many coverages also include two high safeties? Like is there going to be a spot on the field? The whole thing is, I guess baseball banned the shift, but that's
different.
This is insanity.
It seems like a knee-jerk reaction. And look, the numbers for NFL quarterbacks are down drastically this year. And I think a lot of it has to do with guys just not playing in the preseason. So even like an Aaron Rodgers, I was talking about it with Jack in the last hour, they're playing the Patriots tonight. Rodgers hasn't thrown for over 200 yards so far. Now, he's also coming back from an injury, so it does take a little bit of time. But I think once we get into, 4 or 5 weeks in the season, we're going to see those numbers tick back up. But I think everybody's just kind of overreacting to just everybody kind of being slow out of the gate. And look, I appreciate good defense. I don't mind low-scoring games, but, the NFL, like you said, has tilted so many rules in favor of the offense. Let the defense win one for once.
So that's what's wrong with the Panthers offense. It's the two high safeties. It's not the quarterback. It's not that they are a terribly run franchise. It is it's the safeties.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
If there was one safety there, Bryce Young would be the MVP.
Yeah.
That's the only issue.
Anyway, that's I didn't even know this was a problem.
I didn't either. And that was on Get Up or something this morning that Mel Kiper was talking about, but I've seen a lot of people that have said the same thing. Like, what? Come on, what are we doing?
Hey, here's the other thing. If you run the football, guess what? One of those safeties will creep into the box. So we have completely said running backs don't matter anymore. So if you run the ball, I promise you'll get some single high safety looks.
Football's a chess match.
Yes.
You got to move your pieces to make them move their pieces and so on and so forth. And I don't think the NFL is going to change a rule. I just think this is a talking head that's, throwing a knee-jerk reaction out there that's getting exactly what he wanted to. A lot of buzz out of it.
It worked. You got the buzz. So credit to that, I guess.
So I don't think we're going to see any rules change as far as safety alignments in the NFL or any other level of football because, like you said, too much is already favored towards the offense. That's okay to let defenses win one for once. I don't mind.
How many different coverages you would be banning if you did that.
Yeah.
So
that'd be opening a Pandora's box. We're not going to go there. We will talk a little bit of soccer to start the next hour. Shelley Smith going to kick off the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Check in on how her soccer team is doing. That's coming up next here on your Thursday on the Game.
You want to do a prance right here?
Yeah, I got it.
All right, you can get ready to fall into savings on your HVAC system. Our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating currently offering HVAC rebates and a special financing offer up to 60 months in HVAC rebates up to $650. You can invest in energy-efficient equipment, receive an instant rebate, again, up to $650. And you can take advantage of a special financing offer, again, up to 60 months, available through our friends at Krantz Cooling and Heating. KrantzCooling.com. That's Krantz with a K, Cooling with a K, KRANTZ. Can't spell it. KrantzCooling.com. Or give them a call, 803-672-3224. They've been to my home. I've trusted them to go out to my family's home as well after they moved here. They can do anything you need for HVAC.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Ed, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you on this Thursday. Plenty of football to get to later on in the hour, but we're going to start off today talking a little bit of Gamecock women's soccer. Happy to be joined once again on the Love AAA phone lines by head coach of the women's soccer team, Shelly Smith. Coach, first of all, thank you so much for taking a little bit of your time. We last talked to you a couple weeks back, right as the season was getting going. Since then, you guys kind of went on a streak of ties there, but were able to break that this past weekend with a 6-0 victory over Georgia State. How would you assess the season so far?
Yeah, good morning, guys. Thanks for having me, and definitely excited to be starting SEC play today in Georgia. And we have, as any non-conference season, we were well tested and played some great opponents. The run of ties, yes, were a little disappointing, but we, it would have been worse, I guess, if we had some losses in there. But our teams battled. We had all kinds of scenarios and learned a lot. So we're, growing as a group, getting better each time. We played probably the best opponent we had faced in Georgetown last week, and they were excellent. And we came back twice to tie that up. It showed a lot of heart, and we know we can play with anyone. And now as we hit the conference, it was great to score some goals this past weekend.
Hey, Coach, it's Wes. Appreciate you taking the time today. And for those listening, Gamecocks, like Coach just said, will be facing Georgia tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern, ESPNU, if you want to watch that at home. So, Coach, I'm curious, how do you go about sort of building that non-conference schedule each year in terms of, not only trying to let a new group every year settle in and sort of get on the same page with each other, but also go ahead and kind of build in those tests to where once conference play does start, it's not just a massive jump up in competition?
Yeah, that's definitely the balance you try to face in the non-conference, where you need to play some opponents that you can try to get the new players, their feet wet, and we can get out there and compete against another opponent outside of ourselves. And also challenge yourself so you see top-level competition. We always have a match with Clemson. It's been great that they've been a top-ranked team as well as us. So that's always a great battle that we'll have on the schedule, and then we build around that. So it's a balance for sure. And, as you guys know, it's disappointing we didn't take care of some of those ties and get a win here and there. But I think, again, I was very proud of the group to battle and find a way to make sure they weren't on the losing side of things, but they found ways to win and battle and come back from goals, et cetera. And it's just kind of, you get lucky. Last year, I think some of our opponents didn't have the best season, so we got hit a little bit with the RPI, with the strength of our schedule. And sometimes you just don't know. But I have a pretty good feeling when you look at teams in our region and who we play, what their track record's been. And so, again, I think this year we have had a great lineup of competition.
Coach, Chris Clark here. Our friend of the program, one of your veterans, Kat Berry, had yet another big game the other night. She scored a couple goals in, 2 minutes and ended up with a hat trick on the day. She now has 41 career goals, and so she's number 2 in the South Carolina record book. Just generally, what has she meant to the program, not this season, but since she's been here?
Yeah, she's been a huge piece of our team. She came in as a freshman. We knew she had great talent coming in from the Boston area, and she's just grown every year. She's always had, a strong shot and good size and held balls up, but she's added to her game every year. She'd like to play beyond college, and so she's been working towards that. She could have gone somewhere last year, but she wanted to play one more year of college and keep developing. And so there's little pieces to her game that she's continuing to get better at and showing that she is a threat to score goals, to get behind, to defend. She does a lot of things that good forwards are going to have to do when they jump to that next level. So very proud of what she's done and how she's grown over her time here. From the veteran to the rookie, Coach, let's talk about Katie Shea Collins. Obviously,
from what I've read, was a massive pickup for your program just in terms of her accolades coming in, highly recruited, things like that. And she's lived up to it in a hurry. 4 goals already this season. Took home some SEC honors this week. And just how has she been able to make such a quick impact for you all?
Yeah, she's a special player for sure. Not just, skill-wise or athleticism. She's a competitor. She's probably her fault is she's a bit probably too tough on herself. Not everything's be perfect. I think she's got to learn that piece, but otherwise, what a competitor. And she's special the way she plays. She sees things, quicker than a lot of people. And she's just so good in front of goal. Those are the hardest players to find, are the ones that can find the back of the net, and that makes her very valuable. But she also does a lot of good things. She does the work to get behind the ball, to help defend, and all these pieces. And as a freshman to come in and take on a role that we put her in already, she's been outstanding. And so huge, bright future ahead of her. She's had looks and chances with the national team, the U20s. She went in as an alternate, so I know she's getting good experience too outside of that on the national level. So definitely a fun one to watch and watch for the future.
Again, talking to head women's soccer coach Shelly Smith here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour and talking about Katie Shea Collins. I know it's small sample size, but she hasn't been available for every single game so far this year. But when she's been on the field, she obviously makes a big impact. What difference does she make when she's in your lineup as opposed to when she's not?
She's another threat to score. Kat takes a lot of the attention on teams, and then you add her in, and you've got another person that they've got to be aware of. In addition to Karina Zulo's come back and done a great job in our wide area creating opportunities. So just when you have more talent and players that can get the job done and teams have to worry about, it makes it that much better for our other players that are working off those talents. And our midfield is starting to get involved in some of the scoring, which is an expectation and a hope that we can do more of. Our outside backs are getting forward, putting balls in dangerous areas, all the things we're expecting as we grow as a team here. But, to have those two up top especially has been a help to work off each other.
Coach, like you mentioned, opening up with Georgia tonight. I was reading on them a little bit. They've played a pretty tough non-conference schedule as well, it looks like, playing some top 10 teams. What can you expect just in terms of particulars in this matchup, kind of some keys for you all and just what you're going to be paying most attention to tonight in this game?
Yeah, I mean, we actually play similar style setup. I think they've shown they're very dangerous, very good 1v1 opportunities they're given in the attack. We've got to be very disciplined in our defending against them and take advantage of the opportunities we have as they push forward, which they do. We've got to make sure we make them defend us. And I think they have definitely proven themselves in the non-conference. Both of us have had good battles. They've come out with more wins. They're currently ranked. They were predicted to be a top team just like us in SEC. So this is a tremendous battle to start SEC play. It's quite a matchup, and it's going to be a great test for both teams. And, we just need to come in here and play the way we know we can. And on the road or at home, we've got to make sure we take care of business.
As you alluded to earlier, Coach Smith, there's going to be, a lot of really good teams in this conference. But just to zoom out and kind of take a big picture overview as you get into conference play, do you have any thoughts on maybe how the conference compares to, the past few years? Like, it's always going to be competitive. There's always going to be a lot of NCAA tournament teams, but is this maybe some of the best you've seen? I know to a degree you don't know, right, until you get into it, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think our conference is definitely stronger than ever. I mean, you add two very strong teams in Texas and Oklahoma as well, and that just makes it that much more competitive for us all. But everyone has been growing as a program and well supported and shown that they can recruit some of the top talent in the country. And it used to be ACC dominated, and now the SEC has really come forth and believe we put more teams in the NCAA last year for the first time ever than the ACC, and that's just been showing the growth. And this year's even more. We have, we've been a top 25 team. We just got knocked out this past week, but there's 4 or 5 SEC teams in there, and that hasn't been the case in past years. So it's extremely competitive, and we're all very close, and it's going to be a huge test as we make it through the SEC season here. As these teams have gone in and done well in the non-conference, now we got to battle each other and battle it out among us, and then see how it all turns out. But completely agree with you. It's one of the toughest years I've seen in a conference.
Again, talking to head coach of Gamecock Women's Soccer, Shelly Smith here. And as Wes mentioned a moment ago, tonight at 6 o'clock on ESPNU, you'll be on the road taking on the Georgia Bulldogs. And this has been a tight series, 16, 13, and 6 all-time. Gamecocks leading that series. And an interesting little wrinkle, Gamecocks coached by a sibling of one of your former players. So from a aspect, where does this one stack up in the SEC for you?
Yeah, I think this has always been a pretty strong rivalry for us. We've always had a lot of Georgia players, looking at our school, going up against the recruiting process, but also attending and coming back home to play. So it means a lot to both schools, and it is, and we're, I guess, the closest in distance-wise. So it's something that we know it is a rivalry in our own mind, but every game is a challenge, and we look at it as just one of the SEC matchups we have to deal with. So we don't put too much pressure on who it is and all that. We don't need to be prepared for what they bring, but also really focus on what we need to do to beat them.
Well, Coach, I want to wish you and your team the best of luck coming up tonight, and I look forward to checking with you a little bit on down the road as the season rolls along.
All right. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it.
Again, head coach Shelly Smith of Gamecock Women's Soccer. Again, that matchup with Georgia tonight at 6 o'clock, which you can watch on ESPNU. Dive back into football coming up next. Explosive plays, a big deal. Across the landscape of football, where does South Carolina stack up in the SEC, and what does that mean for the season going forward? That's coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you. I was on The Athletic yesterday. Seth Emerson, who covers college football, wrote an interesting article about explosive plays and their reference to team records in the SEC. You guys have been covering football for a long time. I feel like it's been more in recent years where the term explosive and talking about explosive plays and win rates on that has become much more of a part of the conversation. We obviously have a lot more statistics and stuff to back up that now, as opposed to just saying, oh, well, you just need to hit big plays however many years ago. It's become much more of a, I guess, scientific conversation around explosive plays and their importance in football.
Yeah, if you have an explosive play on a drive, even, your chances of scoring go up a ton. I don't know what the number is, but it goes up a lot. And that's something, I remember Muschamp's keys to a win. And he had sort of 5 key tenets that, hey, if you do these 5 things, you are probably going to win the game. And, Beamer even talked the other day. I don't know how much they differ or are the same, but after the ODU game, he said, hey, we hit all of our goals for this game. And one of the ones that basically, hey, if you do these 5 things, is win the explosive play battle. So that means both in terms of, do you have explosive plays on offense and do you sort of limit explosive plays on defense? Then chances are you're going to have a really good shot to win that game, especially if you can hit on the other 5. And they're kind of stuff that you would expect, more like, hey, don't turn the football over, like win the turnover battle. One of the more intricate ones for Muschamp was win the middle 8, which is sort of when teams will almost go 2 for 1 at the end of the half and then the start of the second half. So I think explosive plays have now been categorized, and we have like hey, this distance of a pass, this is an explosive pass. A little bit less than that is an explosive run. Most people do, I guess, 12-yard run is explosive run. But I think it is still one of those things, though. It's a little bit of a symptom like everybody wants to have big plays.
Of course.
So you still have to find a way to get those big plays. It's not just like, all right, well, hey, now we know we need explosives, so let's go get some. Mm-hmm. Okay, you still have to design ways to where you can execute and get big plays. And so I think it is a nice guide, but you also have to just go find a way to do it.
A great stat from that piece that you mentioned, Tyler. Conference or non-conference so far, SEC play, SEC games, the team that wins the explosive play margin has a 32-2 record. Now, little skewed early. Sure. You've got Ole Miss hasn't played a conference game. Missouri hasn't played a conference game. There's been some really good offenses playing, frankly, overmatched teams. We'll see what that is at the end of the year. I imagine it's probably not going to be a 16-1, 32-2. It might not be that high, but generally it's good. I think we mentioned this a while back. Remember when Ellis Johnson was the defensive coordinator here? He would frequently say, he said this more than once, like, hey, everybody talks about bend but don't break, and people kind of get irritated by that. The chances of an offense going up and down the field over and over, and you make them need, 10, 12 plays to score a touchdown, the chances that they screw up at some point in that are probably higher. Now, that was, we all remember when Ellis was here. Since then, whatever you want to call it, 10, 15 years later, offenses are better and even more high-powered. But I think there's still a lot of truth in that. Explosive plays are huge. I was even watching, Akron, the opponent for this weekend for the Gamecocks. They played Ohio State and Rutgers so far this year, and they got beat 52-6 by Ohio State, 49-17 to Rutgers. Lopsided scores. Early in that game, first quarter or so, competitive. They went down early to Ohio State. They're winning 3-0. They scored on the first drive. Hung in there with Rutgers for a little bit. And I did notice throughout those games, the biggest difference is Ohio State and Rutgers just made a lot of explosive plays because they're better, right? They're not getting 3 yards a pop. That's not how they just overwhelmed them. Kyle Monangai from Rutgers rushed for over 200 yards. Jeremiah Smith, the Ohio State freshman, had a bunch of explosive catches. I think he had a couple touchdowns early. So whether it's in those games or even like another one referenced in here, Georgia, Kentucky. Georgia had more explosive plays, very evenly matched. It's definitely, I think there's truth to it.
And it's not just getting the explosive plays yourself, it's limiting your opponents to doing them. Think back to the Old Dominion game, the 2 touchdowns they scored. One of them was on the busted coverage by DQ Smith, and the other one was the long touchdown run by their quarterback on the blitz that South Carolina brought in. And when you look at these numbers that Seth Emerson has, and this is based off of the guidelines that Wes laid out a moment ago of runs greater than 12 yards and passes greater than 16 yards. South Carolina is tied for 11th with Oklahoma in the differential, which is a .33. So they average 7.67 explosive plays per game and give up 7.33 per game. So you're right there about a 50-50 balance between having them yourself on offense and giving up about the same amount. So you got to create that bigger differential by limiting your opponents doing them and creating more yourself on offense.
Yeah, and I think this defense has been really good, but if there has been one thing that has plagued them a little bit, it is giving up the explosive plays. And in particular, I would say giving up some of these explosive runs against LSU that, here's the thing. Explosive play can come many different ways. It can be a shorter pass that becomes a bigger, overall play. It can be a throw down the field. And it can be a run that is blocked up for a certain amount, but then you miss a tackle or two, and it becomes a much bigger chunk play. And I think that's what caught South Carolina against LSU is one, they had some pretty good adjustments, I think, late in that game that allowed them to break off a couple of those runs, but they were in position to make plays on several other runs and had missed tackles. And so I think for Carolina moving forward, we know the offense remains kind of a work in progress. We know that Lenoris has missed a lot of time. We'll see if and what he does this weekend. But I also think if you're South Carolina, you've played 2 SEC teams, so I would expect those numbers to be a little bit more tight when you've played SEC teams versus non-conference games, and a lot of these other teams have only played non-conference games or have played 1 SEC team. So we'll see what that number does as the year progresses, and if you can both add and cut down on both sides of that, because, like you said, it is both sides of it that we're sort of weighing here.
Yeah, it's I think it's actually going to be a key for South Carolina this entire year. Like, you go back to the LSU South Carolina game, explosive plays for South Carolina were huge in that game, and they've been pretty good in that department. I mean, go back to Kentucky. They were able on 3rd down even to make some explosive plays. You go back to the LSU game, you get the 75-yard Sellers run. You get the, 66-yarder for Rocket Sanders. This offense may not be built to say, hey, we're going to completely control the game. We're going to control clock. We're going to just go up and down the field. They're not like we see Ole Miss up here. They're probably not as explosive as Ole Miss, right? Or like a Missouri. But they have the capability to be explosive in a different way than last year. Last year, South Carolina hit explosive plays, but what were they? It was normally Spencer Rattler to Xavier Legette. It looks a lot different than this year. This year, your explosives seem more centered around the run game, right? So can you get a little bit more explosive in the passing game? That's kind of how I'm applying this to the Gamecocks, and I think they need to get a little more explosive in the pass game. I think they need to not be quite so overly reliant on explosives. That was a problem last year. You got to kind of have a mix of it. But I think it's a positive that through 2 conference games, they made some of those explosive plays. I think that actually might bode well.
Absolutely, and something important we hope to see South Carolina's offense continue to do, and hopefully the defense can find a way to limit those, especially as we get into some of these tougher games as the season rolls along. Lower Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest rolls on for another week, $400 up for grabs as South Carolina takes on Akron this upcoming weekend. And just like as always, go online to 1075thegame.com and click on the Lower Lisa tab to register for your chance to win the money whenever a Special Teams Touchdown does occur for the Gamecocks. Roll along on your Thursday. We'll hit a Make Your Case coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here in the game.
All right, guys, as always, let me tell you about our friends over at Classic Roofing. Head on over to classicroofingsc.com for more information on their services and for a free estimate. That phone number, 803-590-7870. With a wealth of experience spanning more than 20 years, the team of experts at Classic Roofing is well equipped to handle any and all of your roofing requirements, whether that is a residential project, a commercial undertaking, or really anything in between. They've got you covered. The mission is simple: provide you a top-notch roofing solutions to not only protect your property, but also enhance its curb appeal. Do what I did. Do what my family did. Call them today. Let them come out. Go ahead and give you a free estimate. They're going to give you an idea. Hey, are there some problem areas on this roof already? What does the life of this roof look like? So you can go ahead and plan for the future and make sure you're covered there as well. 803-590-7870 or classicroofingsc.com.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you on this Thursday. Get the sounder ready, Dave, because Chris tells me he has to make a case ready for us.
All right, guys.
Right on cue, Dave. That was
perfect.
He was ready. And I'm ready to present the, let's see, I guess we're presenting a case, and then y'all are going to make a case.
Okay.
So, as I alluded to earlier, we only have 3 weeks of college football, 3 games for SEC teams. And, you know, some of the SEC teams have not even played a conference game. Some have, like the Gamecocks, and Kentucky's obviously played a couple. But we're getting a little bit better, I think, of an idea. Like, it's safe to say it's taking shape, maybe, what we think of some of these teams. Obviously, 16 teams in the conference right now. So make your case, guys. With what we know right now, in week 3, or going into week 4, is South Carolina in the top 8 of the SEC right now. Not standings. Too early for that. I'm talking eye test, your opinion. Are they in the top 8? And Tyler Head is has been called to the witness stand first.
Let me see. Let me quickly count the teams that I believe
there's 16 teams.
I know. I'm aware there's 16 teams.
There's so many teams, though. I really do have to look at a list of.
Yeah, you got to like remind yourself.
Like,
yeah.
Let's see, 6. So we're talking about them being 8th or better.
8th or better.
8th or better. And
yep, you got to be 8 or better
so far. Man, that's tough.
I know.
I think they're definitely top 10. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. I feel like we still don't know. And the teams that I consider them to be right around right now are like an A&M. And yes, that's a ranked A&M team. Won this past weekend without Connor Wakeman down there in the swamp. I still feel like we don't know everything about them. Same thing with Oklahoma, who's still trying to figure out its offense. Offensive line has some issues there. I don't think they're that far away from what those two teams are. I wouldn't say they're necessarily in the top 8, but probably 9th or 10th right now, because I can comfortably say they're better than Arkansas, better than Auburn, better than Vandy, better than Mississippi State, better than Florida. They obviously beat Kentucky a couple weeks ago and had LSU on the ropes. But I'd say probably just outside the top 8 right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So I went at it from the backwards perspective.
Yes,
as who's ahead of them, for sure. Georgia, Texas, Bama, Ole Miss, Tennessee. That's 5. Chris assures me that they're beating Mizzou this year.
It's got to happen eventually.
Did no such thing.
He did. I heard it. But for now, you give Mizzou the edge. That's 6.
Mm-hmm.
You have LSU just beat you in your place, so you have to put LSU ahead. So that's 7. So that would put South Carolina at competing for 8, which means, do you think they are better than Oklahoma or Texas A&M at this point?
So it's those 3 competing for the middle, pretty much the exact middle spots.
Yeah.
Yeah. So A&M has beaten
Florida.
And
Notre Dame. They lost.
No, they lost to Notre Dame.
Was it Tarleton?
They lost to Notre Dame. So
no, McNeese. They beat McNeese in week 2. But and
a Notre Dame team that got upset the next week.
And that's the thing, is like that loss looks worse now in hindsight because of Notre Dame losing to NIU. And I think we gave a lot of credit to A&M's defense in that game, but we also kind of learned in the NIU game, like, well, Riley Langford isn't that great of a throwing quarterback right now if he's not able to use his feet. So, again, I still feel like we don't know everything about them. And, God, Florida's god-awful. And, you know, again, Marcel Reed goes down there as the backup quarterback, looks like a superstar in that game. Yeah. So it's still tough to exactly say how good A&M is.
Yeah, you've lost to Notre Dame, or you lose to Notre Dame at home by 10. You beat McNeese, whatever.
Yeah, with that loss, I think if we're making our case, then South Carolina over A&M. And I have assured everyone that South Carolina's beaten Oklahoma this year. So, yes, 8.
8. Yeah.
So right on the number.
Make my case. Buy it.
What is this? Yeah, so Tyler's got them. You got them 9.
I'll put them 9.
And you've got A&M ahead of them? Or Oklahoma?
I'll put Oklahoma ahead of them for now. Again, I think I don't know enough about A&M just yet. I'll put them.
So Oklahoma's 8
ahead.
Oklahoma, Carolina, A&M is what you have.
Oklahoma, Carolina, A&M. Yes, 8, 9, 10.
I will go.
You know who's a little better than I thought is sneakily Arkansas.
Yeah,
they didn't blow that game to Oklahoma State a couple weeks ago.
They began it a little more, but they did.
They did.
I mean, it's like saying if South Carolina wouldn't have lost to
do have
LSU.
Consequences.
Yeah. You got to count. It's like LSU. Even if you're sitting there going, man, I really think South Carolina was the better team than LSU. That's fine because I kind of agree, but they lost at the end of the day.
The game is also in Columbia.
That Arkansas Oklahoma State game, one of only 2 SEC games where a team won the explosive play battle and lost the game.
They won like every single statistical category.
They outgained it by almost 300 yards too.
That game was
insane.
That game had another very weird statistic that I'll effort as I'm talking here, but here's where I've got him. I think I agree with Wes. I've got him 8, South Carolina, and I'm going right now. I'm going A&M then Oklahoma. Oklahoma's been shaky.
Their defense is good.
They do have good defense. Their offense, though.
Yeah. I mean, they're kind of dealing with some of the same problems Carolina is, where you have a now redshirt freshman quarterback starting for the first time, trying to get things clicking a little bit. Offensive line isn't where it needs to be. So, if anything, I feel like Carolina and Oklahoma kind of look at each other, and it's like looking in a mirror almost.
The Spider-Man meme? Pointing?
Bit.
I mean, and Oklahoma, I'm sitting there talking about their offense. I mean, they scored 34 points against Tulane. I don't even know. Do they have a defensive score in there? I don't even know. I didn't get to watch that entire game yet, but they've been a little bit shaky.
Tulane is a sneaky good program, too.
Yes, for sure. And, they've got the 16-12 win over Houston, and you go, oh, that was ugly. But then you got South Carolina's very similar Old Dominion game, right? So you're kind of splitting hairs probably with those teams.
So talking about Oklahoma, this weekend you have the Josh Heupel Bowl with Tennessee going into Norman, Saturday night game on ABC. A lot of people are expecting Tennessee to go in there and just dominate this game, win by multiple scores. If that happens, let's say it's, 42-17 or something like that, does that drop Oklahoma in your opinion, or is it, Tennessee's just that much of a better team and, they're high up in the SEC for a reason?
I tend to think Tennessee is going to smash them. I think it's more about. I think it's about both. I think Oklahoma is decidedly, at least right now, middle of the pack in the SEC, and Tennessee is pretty elite on offense. And then I think on the other side, you've got James Pierce. I mean, they're going to have to try to block him with 3 guys, I think, based on what I've seen from their
offensive line.
So it's a bad combination, I feel like, for Oklahoma at this point. I mean, how much do we factor in also if you're going to have this conversation? Because we're talking about power rankings, which doesn't, like, who's better. You know what I'm saying? We're not necessarily saying who's got the best resume when we're having this conversation. So, again, I think Arkansas is sneakily in the mix. But what do you make of the fact that South Carolina didn't have Lenore Sellers for the second half against LSU? So if we're talking about a healthy South Carolina, like a healthy Lenore Sellers, does that change your argument as well? I think we got to factor all those things in. The ODU game, it happened. South Carolina won, but way tighter than anybody expected. But you go back to Sellers as well, their first career start, and I mean, he said it himself, like, hey, I got sped up a little bit. Looked like his first career start. You didn't see signs of that in game 2 or 3 when he was healthy. So there's still a lot to sort of sort through. And also, guys, every year, like, there will be a team or two on here that looks just very shaky early on and puts it together. and there will be a team or two that looks outstanding, and whatever it is, you can never even quite put your finger on it. Sometimes it's an injury. Sometimes it's not an injury. Sometimes it's just how it plays out. They will fall off and fall back. I mean, these are not robots. These are humans, and you got to go play well. Like, you don't just have to be good. Like, you have to actually go do it.
Yeah. Who's the worst team right now? I think it's Mississippi State.
Yeah, getting blown out by Toledo is pretty bad.
Yeah. It's probably got to be State. Vandy has, as we said, they've come back down to earth. Florida's
pretty bad.
They might still be in the mix,
they're
too.
in that conversation, right?
Florida and Mississippi State are fighting to not be the worst team this weekend in the Dan Mullen Bowl.
Yeah, we'll have a good answer, out of those two at least this weekend.
Loser of that game is comfortably 16th.
I did pick the Gators. I feel like they're a little bit not as bad, not quite as bad.
Like Mississippi State, it's understandable, right? Like, they're completely rebuilding that program, still feeling the effects of Coach Leach's passing a couple years ago. Like, Florida has a lot of talent on their team, a lot of high caliber talent. They recruit in the top 20, had a good transfer portal class. They shouldn't be as bad as they are. So in comparison, that I feel like that almost kind of makes it worse.
Yeah. By the way, I was just reading Wilhelm's analytics breakdown, and he is using the CFN strength of schedule metric. A&M in South Carolina, whatever that analytic uses, has that as a true pick 'em, like straight up, toss up, throw it in a blender.
Yeah.
5 and 5 if you played 10 times.
Yeah, and we'll have that game coming up later on in the season. Akron coming up Saturday night. Let you hear what the coordinators had to say about the Zips. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
Well, I mean, they have two different types of quarterbacks, kind of, very similar to what we had last year with Spencer and Lenoris. Obviously, give two different types of styles, but I think they're both tough. They're both respected. They both can make plays with their feet and their legs. I think they understand what Coach Moorhead is asking for in the offense and running it, and they do a good job of commanding the offense and being leadership, good leaders.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Ed, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you. Clayton White yesterday talking about one of the wrinkles that Akron brings to the table with their offense, running a two-quarterback system, not one quarterback in one drive, one quarterback in the next. No, both guys on the field at the same time. Quickly, he mentioned it. Is there a difference between making a play with your legs and making a play with your feet? Because I figured those were kind of the same thing. I think he meant to say legs and arms or feet and arms, but kind of got crossed up there.
Well, I mean, I guess you need both, but no difference.
Really. Yeah, no, I didn't even catch it.
They're doing the same thing.
I didn't even catch it.
But this system, they have Ben Finley, the main quarterback, and Taj Bullock, their other quarterback, will be on the field sometimes at the same time. You'll see them line up Bullock under center for a snap. Sometimes he's lined up out wide as a receiver in the slot. Like a lot of window dressing to this. From what I've viewed in the Colgate game so far, nothing that stands out as far as like wow plays they've done with this, but something you do have to account for.
Yeah, does it work?
That's the question. I haven't seen
Remember,
it yet.
Yesterday I was like, y'all, check this play out. And Wes is like, they lost 13 yards.
Yeah, Chris is like, dude, they're lining. It was like the annexation of Puerto Rico or something. And then
it got blown up.
Dude just got smashed.
Well, the important thing to remember is when you're out there watching on Saturday, another sellout, they're not, if you're going, where's the other quarterback? They don't run it every play.
Yeah.
So when you think a two quarterback system, like it is a wrinkle. It's something that they implement. It'd be kind of like, saying you run Wildcat. You don't run it every single play. But they do some neat things with the quarterback and even with the tight end. So the quarterback, they'll line up as receiver, motion him in. Like you said, Tyler, sometimes he takes a snap. Sometimes he's kind of a wing back. They'll hand the ball off to the second quarterback. So you have to, account for the possibility of a run or a pass in those situations. I didn't really see anything in the games that I've watched, the portions of the games I've watched. I've caught parts of all three of their first three games. I wasn't like, wow, that was extremely successful, but it's something that you have to pay attention to. They also use the tight end in a similar way. Like they'll motion the tight end across the formation, kind of like South Carolina does that Josh Simon play against LSU. Mm-hmm. They'll have the tight end even come take a snap sometimes. So there's some eye candy, in this offense.
I think about it like this. Like Joe Moorhead obviously was an offensive coordinator at Penn State, head coach of Mississippi State. I feel like he's taking all the crazy ideas that he could never do in the SEC or the Big Ten. I'm like, I'm at Akron now. Let's just throw it out there and see what happens.
Well, you heard Clayton also say, like, hey, this guy looks at the game of football differently than a lot of people. And, he's sitting there at Akron, like, I mean, it's tough. Like, that's a tough place to win. And I'm sure he's trying to do everything he possibly can. But ultimately, we see this all the time. You have to be able to block to do anything offensively. I don't care what your scheme is. You can't scheme yourself out of not being able to protect the passer. And they're very much like ODU. Like they spent their entire offseason, I think, just trying to find a way to fix their offensive front in terms of pass pro, running the football, not giving up negative yards. They basically lost 50 yards worth of 50 yards of negative plays, basically, to Ohio State. I think they were minus 47 on negative plays, whether it be sacks or TFLs. So Ohio State had 5 sacks. It's another opportunity for this South Carolina D-line to take over a game. I don't expect Akron to score much. I'm sure we'll get further into the game tomorrow, but it should be another opportunity for this defense to have a good day. Can they avoid those explosives, those little sort of misses here and there on defense? I think that will determine whether this is like, a true, maybe not, you don't expect a shutout in today's college football. Like, you're going to score, but I think this could be a game where Carolina gives up like a touchdown or 6 points or something like that.
They do have multiple power forward transfers in the backfield. Ben Finley's played at NC State and Cal. Taj Bullock, the second quarterback from Virginia Tech. Jordan Simmons, a running back, former Michigan State player.
Him.
Yeah, from McEachern, I think, in Georgia is where he played, or one of those schools. Yeah, I think it was McEachern.
They got a former Gamecock on the defense.
Yes, they do.
Joey Hunter.
Yes, Joey Hunter playing out there. So, I mean, I see, we're talking about explosive plays to bring the program kind of full circle here at the end. I think big explosive plays today for South Carolina defensively, not giving them up, making some of their own, and then offensively big opportunities for yards after the catch or run as well.
Plenty more to dive into with this matchup tomorrow, as it'll be Football Friday. We'll give our final thoughts, keys to the game, and scores predictions coming up tomorrow. It's Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
All right, we had fun out at Firehouse Subs in Lexington. Tyler's home base is where we were at earlier this week. Shout out to our guy Larry Chandler for hosting us there and providing, as usual, a feast of Firehouse Subs. And one of the new subs that we got to try, I'd had it before, the new Firehouse Captain's Club. It's got the signature Captain Sorensen's hot sauce, the brand new Firehouse Hero sauce, but also oven roasted chicken, melted pepper